He crowned his new Luna, until his pup ripped the crown off her head and placed it on the Omega's. Welcome to the story, King, where every tale leaves you breathless. The blood on Alpha Kael's hands had barely dried when he placed the Luna's crown on Vivian's head. The entire Silverwood Pack watched in stunned silence as their Alpha, widowed only 3 months prior, crowned the beautiful daughter of the rival Nightshade Pack. Vivian's emerald eyes glittered with triumph beneath the ancient silver circlet, her crimson lips curving into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. With this crown, I declare Vivian Ashworth as Luna of Silverwood. Kael's deep voice echoed through the great hall, though those closest to him noticed the slight tremor in his words. His jaw was set, his amber eyes distant, as if he were somewhere else entirely. The pack erupted in reluctant applause. No one dared voice their suspicions, that this marriage was nothing more than a political alliance, a treaty sealed in ceremony rather than love. The pack needed protection. The rogues at their borders grew bolder each day, and the Nightshade Pack's military strength was legendary. But there was one member of the pack who saw through the charade with the clarity that only innocence possesses. 4-year-old Lily, Kael's daughter, stood beside her father's throne in a white dress that seemed to swallow her small frame. Her dark curls framed a face that was a perfect replica of her late mother's, the beloved Luna Sarah, who had died bringing peace to a pack dispute, her kindness legendary even now. Lily's brown eyes, however, were all Kael's, fierce, observant, and currently brimming with unshed tears. As Vivian descended from the dais, her gown trailing behind her like spilled wine, she didn't spare Lily a single glance. The child might as well have been invisible. Congratulations, Luna Vivian, Beta Marcus said, bowing low. Others followed suit, a river of bent heads and murmured blessings. Kael's hand tightened on the armrest of his throne. He caught his daughter's eye and something passed between them, an apology, perhaps, or a promise. Lily looked away first, her small hands balling into fists. The celebration that followed was extravagant. Wine flowed like water, and the great hall filled with music and dancing. Vivian held court in the center, accepting praise and admiration with practiced grace. She was beautiful, there was no denying it, tall and elegant, with the kind of poise that came from years of training to be someone's perfect Luna. But she wasn't Sarah. Kael stood at the edge of the festivities, a glass of untouched wine in his hand, watching his new Luna with hooded eyes. Every smile she gave, every gracious nod, felt like another stone added to the weight on his chest. You did what you had to do, Marcus said quietly, appearing at his side. The pack will be safe now. Will they? Kael's voice was barely above a whisper. Or have I just invited the wolf into the henhouse? Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted near the kitchens. I said, get out. You're not needed here anymore. Vivian's shrill voice cut through the music like a blade. The celebration stuttered to an awkward halt as all eyes turned toward the Luna. She stood in the doorway to the kitchen corridor, her beautiful face twisted with contempt. Before her cowered a slight figure in a worn gray dress, Mira, the pack's Omega. Mira was perhaps 25, though her hard life made her age difficult to determine. She had been with the pack for as long as anyone could remember, always in the background, always serving, never complaining. Her honey blonde hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and her hazel eyes were downcast as they always were. I was only bringing fresh linens for the Alpha's daughter, Luna, Mira said softly, her voice barely audible. That's not your responsibility anymore. I've assigned that task to someone more appropriate. Vivian's lip curled. An Omega shouldn't be anywhere near the Alpha's private quarters. It's unseemly. A flush of shame colored Myra's pale cheeks. She clutched the linens tighter, as if they could shield her from the humiliation. Kael felt something snap inside him. Mira has served my household faithfully for years, his voice rang out, Alpha command threading through every word. The room fell completely silent. She will continue to do so. Vivian's eyes widened, then narrowed. But she was too clever to challenge him publicly on their first day as mates. She offered a tight smile. Of course, Alpha, I was merely trying to establish proper protocols. But the damage was done. Mira hurried away, and the celebration resumed with forced gaiety. What no one noticed was little Lily, watching from behind her father's throne, her jaw set in an expression far too determined for a 4-year-old. The days that followed revealed the true nature of Silverwood's new Luna. Vivian ruled the pack house with an iron fist wrapped in silk. The Omegas began to disappear from public view, relegated to nighttime duties where they wouldn't offend the Luna's sensibilities. The warriors who had served under Sarah found themselves questioned and doubted. And always, Vivian kept Kael busy with diplomatic matters, treaty negotiations, and strategic planning. She kept him away from Lily. At first, it was subtle. A schedule conflict here, an urgent meeting there. But soon, the Alpha barely saw his daughter except at formal dinners, where Lily sat silent and small at the far end of the long table, pushing food around her plate. The only person who seemed to pay attention to the child was Mira. Late at night, when the pack house finally settled into silence, Mira would slip into Lily's room with warm milk and honey. She would sit on the edge of the bed and tell stories, not the sanitized fairy tales most children heard, but real stories about Sarah, about the kind of Luna she had been. Your mother once stopped 2 rival packs from going to war, Mira whispered one night, brushing hair from Lily's forehead. Not with strength or threats, but with kindness. She invited both alphas to dinner and served them herself, showing them that if she could humble herself to serve them, they could humble themselves to make peace. Lily's eyes shone. Papa doesn't talk about Mama anymore. Your papa is hurting, little one. Sometimes grown-ups hide their hurt by being busy. I don't like the new Luna, Lily said fiercely. She's mean to you. She's mean to everyone. Myra's smile was sad. Some people are shaped by pain into something hard. We must be careful not to let it shape us the same way. What neither of them knew was that Kael stood outside the door, listening. His hand pressed against the frame, his eyes closed, fighting the burning sensation behind them. When had he stopped being a father? When had he let duty consume everything else? And why did his wolf stir restlessly at the sound of Myra's gentle voice? The breaking point came 3 weeks after the coronation. Vivian announced that Lily would be sent to the Nightshade pack for proper education. She made the announcement at a pack dinner, her hand possessively on Kael's arm, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. A future alpha, or Luna, needs the finest instruction. My father has agreed to take her on as a ward. It's a great honor. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Sending the alpha's pup away was unheard of, especially one so young. Kael's face remained carefully neutral, but those who knew him saw the muscle ticking in his jaw. We will discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss. It's already arranged. Vivian's smile never wavered, but her eyes flashed with challenge. For the first time since the coronation, Kael's alpha presence filled the room like a thunderstorm. I said, we will discuss this privately. Vivian's confidence faltered. She nodded stiffly and excused herself. But Lily had heard enough. The child slipped from her chair and ran, not to her room, but down to the kitchens, to the small alcove where she knew Mira would be preparing the next day's bread. She found the omega kneading dough, tears silently streaming down her face. You heard, Lily said simply. Mira knelt and pulled the child into her arms. I'm so sorry, little one. Why is Papa letting her do this? Why doesn't he see? He's trying to protect everyone, sweetheart. Sometimes that means making hard choices. Mama wouldn't have sent me away. No, Mira agreed quietly. She wouldn't have. Lily pulled back, her young face set with resolution. Then I won't go. The ceremony was planned for the following evening, a formal acknowledgement of Lily's departure and the continuing alliance between the packs. The Great Hall was decorated once more, though this time the atmosphere was somber. Vivian had insisted on a ritual where she would bestow a traveling blessing on Lily, cementing her role as the child's stepmother and Luna. Kael had reluctantly agreed, each concession another crack in his already fracturing soul. The pack gathered as the sun set, casting long shadows through the hall's high windows. Lily was brought out in a traveling cloak, her face pale but composed. She looked so much like Sarah in that moment that several pack members had to look away. Vivian stood before the Alpha's throne, the Luna's crown glittering on her head. She beckoned Lily forward. Come, child, kneel and receive the Luna's blessing for your journey. Lily walked forward slowly, too slowly. There was something in her posture, a coiled tension, like a spring wound too tight. She stopped before Vivian and looked up at her with those fierce amber eyes. Then she turned to the crowd. This isn't my Luna, her small voice rang out with shocking clarity. My Luna is dead, and this one is just pretending. Gasps echoed through the hall. Vivian's face flushed with rage. You insolent little. But Lily wasn't finished. In one swift movement, she reached up and grabbed the crown from Vivian's head. The Luna shrieked, grabbing for it, but Lily was already running straight to Mira. The Omega stood against the far wall, her eyes wide with shock and fear. She shook her head frantically as Lily approached, mouthing, "No, no, no." But Lily was determined. She held up the crown with both hands. "You tell me stories about Mama. You make me feel safe. You're kind to everyone, even when they're mean to you." Lily's voice cracked. "You're what a Luna should be." And before anyone could stop her, she placed the crown on Myra's head. The hall exploded into chaos. Vivian screamed for guards. Pack members shouted over each other. Beta Marcus moved toward Lily, uncertain whether to protect the child or remove the crown from the trembling Omega. But the only person who mattered remained frozen on his throne. Kael stared at Mira, at the ancient crown resting on her honey blonde hair, at her wide hazel eyes filling with tears, at the way she instinctively reached for Lily to shield her from the chaos. And something shifted inside him. Something fundamental and irrevocable. His wolf, which had been silent and dormant since Sarah's death, suddenly surged to life with a force that nearly drove him to his knees. "Mate," it howled. "Mate." The scent hit him then. Wild honey and rain-washed earth, a scent he'd been unconsciously avoiding for months, always finding reasons to take different corridors, to assign others to supervise the kitchens. Because some part of him had known. Some part of him had always known. "Everyone, silence." The alpha command in his voice was absolute. The hall fell quiet instantly. Kael rose from his throne and descended the dais. Every eye followed him as he walked past his sputtering, outraged new Luna, past his Beta, past everyone who had expected him to correct this disruption. He stopped before Mira. She trembled like a leaf in a storm, still holding Lily protectively. The crown sat awkwardly on her head, too large, too grand for someone who had spent her life in shadows. "Alpha, she didn't mean, I would never," Mira stammered. Kael reached out slowly, giving her time to flinch away. When she didn't, he adjusted the crown so it sat properly on her head. "Do you know what the ancient laws say about the Luna's crown?" His voice was soft, meant only for her and Lily. Mira shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. "It can only rest on the head of the Alpha's true mate. If placed on another, it will burn them." He looked pointedly at where the crown sat comfortably on Myra's head, not a mark on her skin. Then he glanced at Vivian, whose forehead bore the faint red marks where the crown had rested uneasily for weeks. Understanding dawned in Myra's eyes, followed quickly by terror. "No, no, that's not, I'm an Omega. That's impossible. The moon goddess works in mysterious ways." Kael's hand cupped her face with a gentleness that made her gasp. "And children see truths that adults blind themselves to." He looked down at his daughter, who was watching with fierce satisfaction. "Thank you, little wolf, for reminding me what a real Luna looks like." "You're welcome, Papa," Lily said, then added with devastating 4-year-old logic, "Now can I stay home?" A laugh burst from Kael, the first genuine laugh since Sarah's death. "Yes, you can stay home." "Absolutely not." Vivian's voice cracked like a whip. She stormed forward, her beautiful face twisted with fury. "This is an insult, an outrage. That crown was placed on my head by the Alpha himself. You cannot just." "The ceremony was a political arrangement, Lady Vivian. Nothing more." Kael's voice hardened, "and it was never consummated. You are not, and never were, truly Luna of this pack." Vivian's face went white, then red. "My father will hear of this. The Nightshade pack will what? Declare war because I refused a mate bond that doesn't exist." Kael shook his head. "Your father is a smart Alpha. He'll understand that an alliance built on lies serves no one. She's an Omega." Vivian shrieked, pointing at Mira. "A nothing, a servant. You would humiliate me for her." The growl that rumbled from Kael's chest made every wolf in the room bare their necks in submission. "You will speak with respect about my mate, or you will leave this pack house immediately." Vivian stared at him, disbelief and rage warring on her face. Finally, she laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You'll regret this. All of you will regret this." She turned and strode from the hall, her heels clicking sharply against the stone floor. Several of the Nightshade pack members who had come with her hesitated, then followed. The silence that fell after their departure was deafening. Kael turned back to Mira, who looked like she might faint at any moment. "Breathe," he said softly. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you crown her if you knew?" "I didn't know, not consciously." But after Sarah died, I shut myself off from everything. From grief, from feeling, from the mate bond that was trying to form. His thumb brushed away a tear from her cheek. I told myself the pack needed strength through alliance. But all I did was bring in someone who made us weaker. But I'm an Omega. I have no power, no status, nothing to offer. You have everything to offer. Lily piped up. You're nice and smart and you make good cookies. Despite everything, Mira choked out a laugh. Then her expression turned serious. Alpha, Kael, you don't have to do this. I understand duty. I understand sacrifice. You can choose a proper Luna, someone strong and worthy. I'm choosing you. Kael's voice was firm. If you'll have me, if you'll have us. He glanced at Lily. I know this is overwhelming. I know you're scared, but I've spent 3 months living a lie, and I'm done lying. Especially to myself. Mira looked at him, really looked at him, for perhaps the first time without fear or subservience. She saw the shadows under his eyes, the grief he carried, the strength that had been eroded by guilt and duty. She saw a man who needed saving as much as she did. I'm terrified, she admitted. Good, so am I. A small smile tugged at his lips. We'll be terrified together. Lily tugged on Myra's dress. Does this mean you're staying? And I'm staying. And we can be a family. Mira looked down at the child, at this fierce, wise little girl who had seen through all the pretense and politics to the simple truth beneath. Then she looked at Kael, at the hope and vulnerability in his amber eyes. Yes, she whispered. Yes, we can be a family. The pack, which had been holding its collective breath, erupted into genuine cheers this time. Marcus was grinning. The Omegas who had been hidden away came forward, joy on their faces. Even the older warriors, who had served under Sarah, nodded their approval. But as Kael pulled Mira and Lily into an embrace, as the crown glinted on the new Luna's head, none of them noticed the figure watching from the darkness beyond the windows. Vivian stood in the shadows of the treeline, her eyes glowing with an unnatural green light. Beside her, another figure emerged, tall and hooded, with an aura that made the very air around them seem to freeze. Are you certain about this alliance? The figure asked in a voice like grinding stone. Vivian's lips curved into a cold smile. Oh, I'm certain. That Omega may have won tonight, but she has no idea what's coming. None of them do. And the child, especially the child. Vivian's eyes gleamed with malice. That little brat took something from me. I'm going to take everything from her. The hooded figure laughed, a sound that sent nearby birds fleeing in terror. Then we have an accord. When the time comes, Vivian interrupted, still staring at the lit windows of the pack house, I'll deliver them all to you. The Alpha, his Omega Luna, and that precious pup of his. And Silverwood Pack will finally understand what it means to reject a Nightshade. She turned away from the pack house, her figure melting into the darkness. Behind her, the hooded figure raised one pale hand, and whispered words in a language older than the packs themselves. Inside the pack house, little Lily suddenly shivered despite the warmth of her father's embrace. The crown on Myra's head dimmed for just a moment, as if sensing a shadow falling across their future. Kael felt it too, that primal warning that every alpha learns to heed. He tightened his arms around his new family and looked toward the windows, his eyes flashing amber in the firelight. Something was coming, something that would test whether their newly formed bond was strong enough to survive. But that, as they say, is a story for another time. Want to know what happens next? Subscribe to the Story King for tales that will haunt your dreams and capture your heart.